Brad,
Nick.
today we're going to talk about better contact by getting unstuck.
Can't wait.
I know you're excited. Look at that smile on his face. All right, so first let's talk about what it is. It's a real buzzy term, real dogmatic term about how to play golf too. So on the downswing, here's my impression from this down the line camera. You can see inside of a tech swing here. On the downswing, having the club head too far in on the way down is really how I'm thinking people are calling getting stuck. Does that seem like a reasonable
I think it's
example?
a fair way to describe it. It's typically then swing directions too far to the right,
Yeah,
and
you
a
got
lot
it.
of bad shots, right?
So at this point in time, the shaft's almost parallel to the ground and my swing direction's aimed 45 degrees to the right. Doesn't mean that's how I'm gonna hit, and thank goodness a lot of tour players who have a similar issue to this don't do that, but yeah, I'm set up for that. I probably look pretty ridiculous from where you're standing too.
Looks like a tough way to hit a shot.
Yeah, it's not very good. So what you're left with at this point in time is you have to slow down all those turns that are too open, in particular my hip turn, and the butt end of the club starts to slow down at a rate where there's an overtaking of the club head. And you see a lot of pictures like this one from that down the line camera. That's pretty disgusting. Look at that.
Looks like hard to predict some start lines with that.
So the butt end of the club is too far away relative to what you might say for a standard swing. You can see the amount that I've twisted the face closed in this shot too. It's aiming almost down at the ground. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I've taught PGA Tour players who hit drivers like that. They tend to be the worst, but it's something that everyone can do. A more traditional way of looking at it at this point in time would be the butt end of the club closer to you and the face more open, and the butt end of the club from the front view more in front of the club head than that picture from the front where the club head's so much further in front of me. So that's really what I would call getting stuck, and then the repercussions coming through the ball are that. So while my face is really close in the follow through, it doesn't mean I'm not likely to hit push cuts. That's actually the bigger problem in all of that. So push cuts and overdraws, you mentioned too far into out. Now here's actually how most people get stuck to begin with. On the way down, if I wanted to move my swing direction the most to the right now, looking at the side view camera from right over here, my swing direction at this point in time is pretty straight based on the angle of the shaft and how far inward I have this behind me. The same story doesn't mean I'm going to necessarily hit a straight shot, but at this point in time, I'm okay. If, though, I wanted to change my swing direction to the most into out, the way I would do it, and you can tell me if I should do something different, but the way I would do it would actually be to open my hips as much as I could and close my shoulders as much as I could. Mm-hmm. That's the start of getting stuck, and that's what I was demonstrating earlier. So there are other ways to do it, but that is the worst way to play. Tiger Woods did an interview famously on the Golf Channel 20 years ago, maybe. I don't even know. Did you see it? What I'm referring to?
May or may not have been born yet, though. Not sure.
No, you're older than 20, Brad. Sorry. He discussed it as his Olay swing, and it was one of those he did with Butch Harmon back when Butch was a very young and spry-looking Butch. But he demonstrated that as his Olay swing, and it was really his hips would be more open than a standard swing that you'd watch from the PGA Tour players, shoulders too closed. And he and Butch were practicing. The way that Butch described it was getting the club head out in front of him. Mm-hmm. I would argue that that isn't actually what they were practicing, but let's talk about that one here too. So another way that you could do this is there are PGA Tour players. I've seen guys like Aaron Baddeley and my buddy that I like to pick on once in a while with this swing, Jimmy Walker, are the worst at this part. On the downswing, when their lead arm's parallel to the ground, it is way too far out away from them. Their elbows tend to be too close together because at this point in time, this is a real problem for a tour player. Now my swing is programmed to be out to in tremendously. It's really hard not to slice across the ball. I'm exaggerating from the side view camera. It's not quite out this far, but that's how our typical slicers come in. So the adjustment to be made there is to start bending yourself backward. Don't turn at all because that would throw the club out more. So from this point in time onward, it's close your shoulders or don't open yourself up at all and bend yourself backward. And you can see how that lowers the shaft. Pretty good demo, huh?
Lowering the shaft and then really aiming the club face of the sky more as well too.
And that's the worst part because now you're just set up for that same problem. Because you bent yourself backward like a non-PGA Tour player would do it, most have their arm in more and are bending forward. Mm-hmm. That's the part that keeps the club from going outward. It keeps it pushing out more this way, but not to the point where you slice across it. But with Jimmy and Aaron Baddeley, when he's driving the ball really crooked or starting to raise his arms over his head at the top of his swing, have the shaft out too far. So now it's either slice across the ball or be a PGA Tour player. They choose be a PGA Tour player, bend backward, lower the shaft, open the face. Well, now you're in a world of trouble at this point in time with how you're going to coordinate how to close the face without looking like that image I had before. So it's a really tough way to hit your driver in particular. And a lot of heel hits are the biggest culprit. I've seen Aaron personally hit 40-yard push cut drivers, like 40 yards right of the fairway, cutting 40 yards, banging them off the heel, and having a follow through at the face angle really closed. So not atypical. Next one though is a part of the same idea with the shoulders closed and hips open, and that's your lead arm and how it moves across your chest. So at the top of the swing, or you start at address from that front view camera with your lead arm and your shoulders almost at a right angle, and then throughout the entire backswing, for most players, not all of them, that starts to move across your chest. I say not all of them because some actually can make a little bit of a backswing, and if anything, they start to abduct their arm or move it across their chest this way, or a little bit in their backswing before it starts to adduct and pull across. But it's generally the pattern of moving across your chest this way. If on the downswing you keep your lead arm the same angle relative to your shoulders on the way down, you're setting yourself up for the same problem. I can turn on an Instagram page of golf instructors all over the world teaching people to keep their lead arm the same angle across their chest, or even increase that or decrease that angle, make that even more acute. And what you're really setting yourself up for then is the same problem of unless your shoulders are much more open than a PGA Tour player, looking at the side view camera again, my shoulders might be 40 degrees open. And now I've got a real problem too, because I still need to reach the ball. So now I need to start ulnar deviating my wrists to get the club head down lower, and really taking out a piece for power to begin with, but I'm making my swing direction the most to the right. So,
how do we fix
so
all that?
far?
Yep. How do I fix it all though?
How do we fix all that? Well, first, let's try to identify whatever your problem is. That could be a host of different things, but out of those three, try to pick one. First, I'd identify though, are you actually using that rather simplistic way of describing a problem? Are you stuck? Do you have the club shaft too far in when it's parallel to the ground here and you're ready to go out too much? But once you've done that, here are a couple different ways you can do it. A real simple way is just to start practicing slowing down the rate of your turns, or coordinating those a little bit more like a tour player. So what I'm describing there is at the top of the swing, my shoulders are turned about 90 degrees, my hips are about 45 on my standard shot. Now when I get to where the shaft's parallel to the ground, I describe Tiger Woods' Olay swing and a Wade swing the most out as have your hips open, your shoulders closed. We'll do the opposite of that. Get down to where the shaft's parallel to the ground, and you need to recognize that your knee flex looks very similar to address. Your hips aren't turned open at all, like you can see from this down the line shot. And my shoulders, if anything, are only a few degrees closed, or just make those square as well, or 0 degrees. That would be a good way to practice making swings. So I'd make a backswing and try to pull the shaft down where I had both my hips and shoulders square to the target. If this is a problem for you, the first thing you're going to recognize is that pulling the shaft down means abducting your arm, pulling that across your chest, and you've got to restrict or slow down the rate that you start to turn. So if you get to where the shaft's parallel to the ground, your right heel's off the ground, you might recognize this is the biggest problem for you, for sure. Then you can just hit a shot. You couldn't rehearse that enough while you're at home, just in your office or at work, whatever it is. Grab a little tiny club and make 100 swings like that on the way down, pushing the butt end of the club forward, making the shaft parallel to the ground, no turns, and you'd be well on your way to starting to fix that motor program problem in your head. Next one, though, could be an analogy that you might take from a different sport, which is bowling. So you've got the people who throw a hook. So it starts out to the right of the screen, like out towards you, curves back in. You might notice how those people who throw those balls and they curve, they don't throw it and try to turn their right elbow outward and spin the ball this way. That isn't how it's done at all. It's really shoulders closed, your right elbow closer to your hip than the demonstration I had before. And then they stop turning, or the shoulders and hips don't turn very much from this point in time. And that's what makes your arm go outward. With me on that? So the way that you practice actually tossing this and trying to curve it would be to turn very little, let your arm start to pass, which is with your right arm the adduction, and go like that. And that's how you curve this ball. You could do the same thing while you hit. The idea when you hit is to practice pulling your lead arm down faster than the rate that you're turning. So that abduction of your arm has to go past you this way. That would be a simple way to do it. So I'm not turned very much, but I have the butt end of the club moved pretty far. So a way I might hit this, and this will trip the mic, and we can look at the swing, is to, on the downswing, slide your right foot slightly back, stop turning your hips and shoulders, and complete your swing through the ball. When we look at that one, when the shaft's parallel to the ground, the shaft won't be nearly as far in. My shoulders will be tilted more to the left than usual. And my swing direction is programmed to be pretty straight into the ball. So maybe you could even draw a picture from 6/8 to 6/9 all the way to 7 of just how I'm going to hit that tee in my swing direction. So you might notice there, even at 6, just stopping there, when the shaft's parallel to the ground, notice how my hips and shoulders aren't really turned. Looking in that left picture, that down the line view, aren't turned very much at all. They're almost zero. That would be, it's hard for me to get stuck that way. From the view where Brad's going to show a couple little faded images from like 6/9 to 7 of my swing direction, it's going to look really straight into the ball. So that's pretty good. I can even point at it over here, Brad. So there's my swing direction at this point in time. And then if you advance that even one more frame, you'll see that that's not massively in out. It's just slightly to the right of where my target is. You could practice hitting shots like that. You could certainly smash your driver that way many, many times, and you start to get a feel. What I'm really training is how at the top of my swing, not to let my arms stay pinned across my chest and just turn. I'm trying to pull the butt end of the club down faster than I'm turning. How you doing? You with me?
Yep, speeding up the arms, and for the sake of the drill, slowing down your body some.
Yeah. So that's really how to get stuck. It's kind of a silly abstract term. I wish it were better defined, but I'm really just stating it as the shaft is way too far in on the downswing. If that's your case, then you're stuck. This, I know, will help you get unstuck. It's not complicated, but where in golf do you ever hear about terms like this or have a description of how complicated the small details that make it complicated? You got to know what they are. So if you like this video, go ahead and click thumbs up. Subscribe as always down below. And for more tips and tricks or advice for better contact, check out the links below.